Hi, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 5 demo for the piece I call Cool Under Pressure. So in the middle of a bunch of things going on, Renato Roldan, who's a friend of mine, he did this Draw This in Your Style, and I was like, well, I gotta do that. That looks really cool, but I didn't have a whole lot of time to get to it. So this is gonna be kind of an interesting exercise because what we're gonna do is go through my take on the Draw This in Your Style for this character, but we're gonna talk about some of the things I did to try and speed up the process, so that could be useful. So let's get to it. Here is the final piece that will of course go away and we'll start the sketching process. So already in the beginning of this I thought to myself, okay, I've been posting some of the, or actually I was about to post some of the Village Corrupted stuff. Can I do something that uses some of those techniques and then speed everything up? With the Village Corrupted pieces and for instance this piece, the heaviness in terms of time is in the line art and the coloring is really fast, and which is the exact opposite of say like the Monster series or a lot of the other pieces where it's like a rough sketch and then all of the work of refining is in the painting side. So the idea here is we're going to make it a line driven piece of art. So with the redesign portion, first, the thing that I want to do, my thought process around how to redesign Renato's character, or not redesign, interpret in my style, this is definitely not a redesign, was something I wanted to focus on where she seemed like some sort of a badass adventurer type, and I wanted to kind of focus on that. I thought it'd be cool to just kind of beef her up a little bit, really give her some guns, and put this kind of like cool attitude, because I thought that in the original she had this cool attitude, but she definitely looks determined in the original piece. So I thought, okay, well what if I do a lot of things to try and capture the vibe of the original, but we throw in a little bit more of a nonchalant behavior. So I thought it'd be cool if she was like throwing her coat kind of over her back and we're catching her like mid coat throw. That was the idea. So with the redesign, the only things I really did design-wise was I added a lot more pouches because I thought that would be fun. And then her physique, I think, gets a little beefier than what Renato originally intended. And otherwise, I mean, it's basically the same character, just then through all of the other design decisions that I usually make, like the way I structure the face or the anatomy or whatever it is. Now we're to the line art side. So all of the lines for this, the rough sketch and the final, were done with my fat pencil, which is in the brush set linked below. Actually, well, no, I won't say everything because I did some stuff with the background here that wasn't with that brush set. So the main structure of this thing was all done with that brush set, and then I used some of Procreate's messier brushes to do the background stuff. So with the lines, what I wanted to do was just get a nice, strong, foundational line drawing because I knew what I was going to do was very, very, very limited coloring. And in doing that, the lines have to be what's there to hold a lot of the structure. That's not always true. Nothing in art is an absolute, but it was more about just the way I was going to handle it was lines first, less work going into the rendering, and then we've got ourselves the look we're going for. Now there was an aspect to this look though that is different than my Village Corrupted pieces. This is not 100% that look and feel. It's more about the idea of having these lines and then just having flats with very minimal shadow and lighting work. In the Village Corrupted characters, there's basically no shadows. There are some shadows that I use as a design element to separate aspects, but there's no like light source that's creating cast shadows. Same thing is true here. What we have instead is we have the flats for the colors, and then we've got like a bright pink rim light, and that is more or less the lighting. I do some reflective stuff because I think that's kind of fun. So as I was going through it, I was just playing with all of these different elements and saying, okay, well, I've got enough of this. Does that sell what I'm trying to sell? Well, what if I throw this on? What if I throw that on? So you could say that every technique I used in here, I've used before, but the combination of them was were a bunch of decisions made on the fly and just trying to sort of say like, well, what about this? What about that? Now, we are not to that stage yet, though. What you're still seeing on screen is the line art. I get a lot of questions about line quality or sharpness or how to get like a certain look, and I can tell you I've shown this before on my channel when I've recorded off screen or done like little demos here and there. I do not draw these lines, this style of line just in like a stroke. You can see it in the time lapse. I think if you look really closely you can see that these lines aren't just drawn, they are built. I usually use that term whenever I'm referring to a line that isn't just the natural behavior of the tool that you're using, and it's more about you laying down multiple strokes to try and build the exact shape that you're looking for. That's how these lines are made. In fact, I don't think there's a single line in this piece, maybe the little crinkle by her eyebrow, that is the actual width of the pencil, or maybe the stitching, the seam that you see on the sleeve of her jacket there. Not the one that's the double stitch, but the one that's over the shoulder above the patch that's right behind her head. All of the lines here are done with multiple strokes, building it up and trying to get that thin, thick, precisely that I'm looking for. Now, you will see me in some pieces of art on this channel. It all just depends on what you're trying to go for. I'll do like a stroke-based thin or thick line where it's all about pressure and it's done in one smooth motion, but that's not how I work most of the time, and that's not necessarily the look I'm going for. I'm usually going for something that's more like what you see here. It's usually done by kind of defining the outer limits of the line and then filling in. Sometimes it's a little bit more scratchy, not in terms of the look, but in terms of the application. It's more just like back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. Okay, there's the line. But a lot of the time it's more about like, okay, I'm going to define the thickness of this and then I'm going to fill it in. So an intention from the very beginning when I was doing this piece was to have the coat be blurred. I did fully draw the coat because I didn't want to shortcut that. I wanted it to look like it is properly blurred. It is a full drawing that then gets blurred. So all the lines for the coat are on their own layer. That's why you can see the draw through behind her hair there. And I draw through anywhere more or less, maybe not so much in the lower part, but I draw through so that then when I do all the flats and everything and blur it, when it pulls the blur, it's complete. It's not like there isn't some sort of like a missing space there because the coat would extend beyond her hair or whatever it is. So the way we do that is with a motion blur, and I'll get to that when we get to that part. So now we're nearing the end of the lines. I had to figure out where I was going to put her other hand. I wanted it kind of like holding her belt pouch thing there while she's throwing the coat over her shoulder. And since we're almost done with the lines, that means I'm going to take this Procreate file, duplicate it, and on the new Procreate file that I've renamed with like a new number behind it, I'm starting on the flats. And that's because in order to save layers, I am now going to I have deleted away all of the rough sketches. So at this point, I'm trying to match Renato's original, not perfectly, but close enough that it feels the same. I'm not color picking, I'm just eyeballing. And so I set the background to this kind of like magenta, this dark magenta, and then I've got her skin figured out, her hair figured out. Some of those can get tweaked as time goes on, especially once all the effects start getting thrown on. You want to adjust so that you're still getting the right impact that you're looking for. And then we move through and just flat this thing. How we're deciding now, because this is or in this case my interpretation of the character, how are we going to interpret all of those colors? The lines sit on top of everything, but then the coat lines are underneath all of the flats. So it's like lines on top, flats for her, lines of the coat, flats for the coat. And then you can see here I've done this duplication blur thing on the lines where you duplicate the lines, slightly blur them, and lower their opacity. Here I'm doing some of those vignetting techniques that you see me explain whenever I'm talking about the monster pieces. We've got some skin tone variation in there in the face. We're starting to apply some of the background so that we can get a feel for how we can make it like Renato's original. Here's the background where I'm just using this messy brush set to black and lowering the opacity and just trying to kind of imply these mechanical shapes similarly to what Renato did. And now here I'm putting in the pink rim light, tweaking some aspects of the coat. A lot of this stuff now is just like I've already got the layers there and I'm just kind of playing with them. I don't actually know what's happening right now in the piece, but I'm sure something is happening because it's been captured in the time lapse. Maybe I just can't really say it. Anyways, what's eventually going to happen though is we're going to take all of the layers. Oh, here I'm redoing the rim light. That's right. I had an idea for the rim light and then I changed it. So what we're going to do eventually here is we're going to take all of those layers for the coat. We're going to flatten that folder. and copy it, and then we're going to undo the flattening of the folder just so we can keep it around. We're going to paste in the coat and then turn off that folder. So what that is it's basically duplicating the visuals of that folder but not all of the contents, and then we turn off that folder so that we just don't have a duplicate of the layer. I'm explaining this now because it's when it happens it's going to be really fast and it's going to be almost invisible in this time lapse, so that's why I'm explaining it. Here we're throwing the rim light on the coat. We want the coat lit exactly how the rest of her is lit in the folders for the coat, so it's all on its own grouping that's kind of duplicating all of the efforts that we're putting in on her. And then once we have all of that and we've duplicated that layer and we've got this all flat version of the coat, we will do a motion blur, which is just one of the effects that they have in Procreate. What you do is you press your finger down and you drag it, and the further you drag it, the more extreme the blur is, and the direction you drag it is the direction the blur is going. And so right there you can see it. I add those little extra lines to kind of add this little animated quality. Some of these decisions I'm actually kind of mimicking what I know about Renato's style and seeing if I can incorporate things that I think he might do into mine. Even if they're not in his Draw This in Your Style, I know his work and I'm seeing if there are other references that I can make to emphasize that this is influenced by Renato. Now you can see all of these reflections. I put some bounce on her hair. So from a lighting perspective, it's actually quite simplistic, but what we've done is we've chosen to not do some lighting techniques and chosen to do others. And now the piece is done. So this is a somewhat quick one. I want to quickly do a summary of what we decided to do here. So in my style, drew Renato's character, changed up the pose, but tried to keep the vibe of the original. And then with the coloring, in order to try and find a faster way to get it done, because we wanted to still deliver quality, but we wanted to tweak how we were doing it so that we could save some time. We did almost all flats with very little shadowing. It's just a little bit like in the hair. And then we dressed it up kind of with some lighting tricks, getting the shines in there, getting that bright pink rim light, and getting some of the bounce effects that are on the right side of her. It kind of adds a level of polish to something without having to go in and generate like all the little bit of rendering. And I think that this works because the lines are very strong in the image, and so it really helps with the structure and all of that. In fact, if you go and look at some of the Village Corrupted pieces, there's even less effort put in to the coloring of the figure. I would say there's maybe more in like the environment or whatever, but I tried to keep those very, very minimal because they have a bit of an animated flavor to them. So does this, but this one I think goes a little bit further. So let's quickly take a look at just the lines by themselves, although the sketchy lines are still in there. You can see a little bit of how that is before we bring it over and do the coloring, and then again back to the final version. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting like. If you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next video. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.